I actually want to talk about one of the things that you mentioned, which is race. You
Yep.
mentioned being a Black woman, which, obviously. But there is an additional factor in this wealth gap, and that is the racial wealth gap. So let's watch a video about that.
Pay gap and income gap has dominated a lot of conversations. But, income is different from wealth.
Right.
Wealth is what you own minus what you owe. And even two people working today at most places who are Black and white making the same income would, statistically speaking, have very different levels of wealth. So we thought it was essential that we put some focus on this.
And for many of us, wealth is inherited. The income you make now is something you can do about. Some of this you can't really control. And you have both tracked the lives of 7 Black Americans throughout the book to help personify and give examples for this massive wealth disparity. Give us an example of one person you profiled and what stood out to the both of you.
Sure. I mean, among the 7 people, I want to say is Ambassador Andrew Young, civil rights leader. Many people remember him as being the former mayor of Atlanta.
Right.
We have Michael Render, known as Killer Mike, the rapper. We also have a television executive and some people that others will encounter for the first time as they read the book. One family story that really sticks out to me is a young leader. He was formerly the head of the Georgia NAACP. He was trying to move his life forward economically while also fighting for civil rights. And he had more than $100,000 in student loan debt. And so the debt of student loans is a very crushing thing for many Black families. Many Black students who graduate from college carry a lot of student debt.
I'm glad you used that word crushing because it's difficult for anyone who carries that debt, but particularly if you don't have those lifelines at home that you've inherited. One thing you both take great effort to.
So 61.3% of Black households versus 54% of white households own secured debt.
Mhm.
That is wild. And May Money mentioned, thank God that she didn't get caught up in student loan debt. I wish I could say the same because I graduated college a number of years ago that I won't say, but I still am paying off student loans. It's ridiculous. And because it was so much, it's like most of the time you're just paying off the interest. And like that total number you owe just does not seem to go down.
So true. It's a scam. Okay, this is all a joke. I really recommend community college. I did community college my first year, and then I transferred, just like for also transition purposes and really getting to know who you are as a human. So I just wanted to make that little plug. Community college is also a really great option.
Yeah, I took some classes at a community college after graduation because I was thinking about getting my master's, and I had a great time at Santa Monica College. Great school. I'm not getting paid for that plug. I have another part of this video I want to show that goes more into the wealth gap.
Policy or perspective, but you do look at how government programs have at least exacerbated the problem or in some ways helped ameliorate it. Louise, what jumps out at you as far as government programs that are partly to blame and can do something about it?
There's examples through all of history and even through today of government programs that have been more helpful to white families and not as helpful to Black families. So they've been unequally applied. And, some things that jump out, we cover Freedmen's Bank, which is a bank for formerly enslaved people in the late 1800s, which took their money and then lost most of their money. And we talk about the New Deal, which created mostly helped the white middle class. But actually, the New Deal and the GI Bill were not so easily available to Black Americans. But we also talk about things today, like the bankruptcy system, which actually is race neutral. Anyone could file for bankruptcy, but the experience is not actually a race neutral experience. And Black Americans who enter bankruptcy are much less likely than white Americans to have their debts restructured or forgiven, which, by the way, if you get your debt forgiven, you're wealthier because some of that debt is gone. And more white Americans, a higher percentage of them who file for bankruptcy, are able to get the debt forgiveness. So we have a chapter on that.
Okay. And I know that.
Ooh, that debt forgiveness part really got to me. I just think about a friend in college who she ran up a bunch of credit card debt. And, it's college. Like we may not be the most responsible in how we spend our money. And I remember she said that her dad paid off her credit card debt.
Wow.
And it was a lot of money. And I don't begrudge her that, but that is not something that I had the same option to do when I got myself in trouble. And my friend was not Black. She was Latina. And I just think about friends whose parents were able to pay for college straight up, so they didn't have to take out loans, or who were able to give them a down payment so they could buy a house. And when you talk about Black families and the wealth gap, we're starting from way behind this starting line as white people. So that makes it just that much harder to get ahead.
I completely agree. And I also think that one of the things about like getting ahead and having all of these factors against you is like, to your point, who is teaching us this? It's like all these like learned aspects of things. Also with the pay gap, how we're not even able to get these things. I think about like people like Bozoma St. John, who talked about she had to give a fake name to be able to get her house into, I think it's 2023, 2024. Like this is still these hidden aggressions. There's just so many different factors and nuances to it. And I just completely agree with your point of it's very wild.
It is very wild. So there's one more part of this video I want to play to close out this discussion.
That premise, I think we mentioned it at the top, but it's worth repeating.
Yes. So the typical Black family has 15 cents in wealth for every $1 the typical white family has. And in terms of what people can do, one of the things we recommend at the end of the book with our personal recommendations is that at some point in people's lives, they consider working in partnership with a person who is different from them to understand another person's lived experiences and the issues they face in this country. And
15 cents to $1. That is a huge gap.
Huge gap.
And
Huge.
yet, gigantic.
Disrespectfully big. Like, whoa.
Yeah, disrespectfully big is a good saying for it, because it's scary.
It is scary. And when you look at it,
We both went to predominantly white institution, and that can be a struggle in itself, being one of few Black people in a sea of not Black people. Struggle.
one of the things I'm thinking about is being at a PWI and having all the access to the community that I did have access to, but also what would the experience have been like at a HBC, you know, right? You just have that one thought. I think about like a different world and like school days and all those factors, but I'm so grateful for what I did get to experience. And it's also one of those factors of you're at school with people whose parents paid, to your earlier point, paying their tuition. I'd have people like, oh, we're going to Nantucket for the spring break holiday. And I'd be like, wow, great. You know, like I'm working. So it's just like that juxtaposition of like you could be in the same environment, the same space, but have two different completely walks of life. And that's how I think it was going to a PWI and having that difference. And so it also makes you look at like what is even attainable. You get in your head, like the same thing with home owning. Is it even attainable? Is this something I should even try? So that also comes a factor. I think about also like my 9-year-old niece who will be like, oh yeah, I want to live in an apartment one day. Like she mentioned her apartment. I said, you didn't even fathom a house, you know? And so how young it's starting as well is interesting to observe.
Well, and that's it's a double-edged sword, being surrounded by people who grew up a little bit different from you. Like in the tail end of that video, the Black woman mentions that it's important to spend time around people who have a different lived experience. And I think that is cool because it shows you what's possible. Like when you see friends who come from more wealth and have more opportunities, it shows you what is possible. But at the same time, it can kind of make you feel like, is that something that I can ever really even attain? I was going to say before I was rudely interrupted by my dog. I was going to say that internships. I did not do an internship in college, and it was because at the time, a lot of internships were unpaid. And I was like, how the hell am I going to afford that? Like, I have to actually work. I have to, like, in addition to my student loan, my scholarship, and working, I can't, like, I can still barely afford to pay for all the things. And
Yep.
so these people want to have you work an internship and not pay you. And it's just absurd. I get so angry when I see like unpaid internships. That is freaking slave labor.
It is slave labor, and it should be illegal. Like it really should, because I think about how taken advantage of that you feel and how you are taken advantage of. I remember being in work study in college and being like, I couldn't imagine doing this for no money. Like, I need to pay for books, I need to pay for rent, I need to pay for all of these things because I don't have support. I'm on my own. And so when it comes to that, I think needs to be taken into consideration. Oh, to your point, Jazzy, I had classmates who quit their jobs for the internships. Yeah, so true.
So there's another strain on the wealth of Black Americans I want to touch on. And that's something that I know that we can all relate to. So this is a clip from Native Land Pod.
I don't know about you, but when folks, sort of make up in their mind that you're the one that has the resource, that as the relative, and in my opinion, sort of suspend with the fact that you got 3 kids and you got a family, you got this, you got all that. And it's sort of like, this is what I need. And can you help? And can I just borrow such and such until next week or such and such?
So I actually have some data on this. And the challenge with this, Andrew, as you well know as a parent, sometimes you're now put in a position where now you're taking care of parents and you're taking care of children. So you're getting bled by both ends, which puts you in peril. So then the cycle continues. You put your children in a position where they now have to take care of you and their children. And it's like, how do you stop, right? But many of us are doing just that. So in fact, nearly half of all college educated Black households are taking care of their parents or, putting money back into their family, while just 16% of college educated white households do the same. And more than a quarter of Black Americans live in multi-generational homes here. So you look at what we're doing and also considering the wealth gap.
So that's another, I don't want to say burden, but it's another it's another strain on your ability to accumulate wealth because you have other family members to take care of who may not be as well off as you. And that's something that some white families do not have to deal with. I mean, I'm sure you can think of family members who have reached out to you and been like, can you let me hold like $100 for a couple weeks until I get paid because I need to pay my electric bill. And that's money that you now can't save toward maybe buying a house that you want.
Absolutely. And I think also sometimes you'll have the responsibility or the guilt of it all, or like the parentified child, or having to do a lot of these things ahead of when you thought you would have to, or even if at all. And so I think that that's also a factor. I know several people that give to their parents, that pay their parents' mortgages on top of their own, or they have them in your house. I think it's something that's very, very common, especially in like multi-generational families.
There's also like in New York, there are Black families who do own homes. They own, these nice brownstones, and they have these realtors coming around trying to get them to sell their home so that they can turn it over and gentrify it. And when you dangle a large lump sum of money in people's faces, and a lump sum that they've never seen in their lives, even if it's less than they should be getting, it's hard for people to say no. And so that is also another way that people lose that wealth. And it's just really upsetting. There's one more clip from this video I want to play that kind of touches on a little bit of this.
I get a little frustrated because I made certain choices in life. And I have been a really amazing steward of my own finances. I have budgeted in a way that I have this pot of money to live off of every month. I'll tell you all a very specific story. Just recently, I had budgeted where I paid for everything. All bills are paid, family's taken care of, grocery money, going out money, everything. And I just had $1,000 surplus. This was just free cash for me to do with whatever. If I wanted to pay for dinner one night, if I wanted to catch the train to New York to meet with my publisher, about just whatever, nothing silly.
Your publisher?
Yeah, or whomever in New York. No, not the guy. No, you trying to talk about the guy. No, he would be paying for it if I was going to see him. But me, whatever appointments I might have, because I have to go back and forth to New York all the time, which is really expensive. And so just $1,000 free money, that's not allocated anywhere, not even to my going out budget. And just like that, my family hit me. I need $300. Okay, well, that's gone. Another family member, I need $300. Okay, well, now I'm down to $600. Then this family needed something. Well, now I'm down to $500. And it just got whittled and whittled. And so now I have a $300 surplus.
for myself. Now, I didn't want for anything.
This is so real. This is so common. I know this life well. And you were just like, this is family. We take care of each other, but you also want to just have something for you too and be able to live and not feel guilty about it, like I was saying earlier. And so I feel Tiffany completely where she mentioned the surplus aspect of it, of this is what I've allocated to do with what have you. But like, if you looked at all of the things that you love and that are priority, how long would it take you until you get to your name? Right. And I think that the more she kept saying, she dwindled it down. It's like this responsibility yet guilt, but sometimes burden, I would say, because what you're thinking of all these things that that you're having to do as someone who's also a caregiver for a parent, it can also get to a point where you're saying like you don't want resentment to rise up. And so I think that that's also an element of when I'm hearing her talk, I just hear how much passion, it's like she's got her family's back, like she's got them. But I also think that that also can be the most vulnerable space of like where we are.
I have big dreams, I dream of having a surplus, like being able, and I dream of, being able to own my own home. And I saw May Money earlier said, ooh la la, home ownership sounds nice. I agree, it does sound nice, and I aspire to. Um, but then I think about family members who I know who are struggling. And what does it mean for me to do well while family members struggle? I feel guilt about that. But at the time, it's not like I'm rolling in the dough and I just have all kinds of money to give out to help lift people up out of their circumstances. So it's hard. And I think it's again, like I hate to use the word burden, but I think it's an extra weight that some Black Americans carry that other ethnic groups or races may not have to deal with.
Also marriage and like that rate of marriages and what that looks like for each generation of people settling down and people creating more offspring. I think about that as well. And so it's those numbers are different from what they used to be. Like we were saying earlier, our parents had 4 kids. Okay. That's like by the time they are in their mid-30s. And so I'm just like, wow, like how different it is now. Like we're seeing people having children in their 40s. And so I'm just like, we're not in the days of what we used to see. Like everything is just completely shifting and changing it's just very interesting to observe because I think about how awesome it would be, to have my own house and to have the American dream, like we were talking about earlier. But I'm also just like, I don't want to do it alone. Like I'd love to live in those, like the people say, oh, the big community home on the farm, wherever, and have your family and have, the several feet away. Like we're all gonna have our space. We're all gonna be spaced out, but having that community, that's what a village would look like to me. That's a dream.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Let's see. Jazzy says, I love kids, but I'm not trying to have kids now with how this economy is. I don't want to be unstable and welcome kids to that same unstable place. And that's true. I did some reading about this, and because of the fact that people don't have as much in extra resources, they're having kids later. And so when people ask why aren't you having kids? Why don't you have kids? Because people are broke. Kids are expensive. It's expensive to live.
There's some, daycare is a week. It's crazy.
Yeah, I hear about it, and I'm glad it's not something that I have to worry about, but I feel for people who do. It's insane.
It's nuts. I think it's like 400 a week. Like, what? Are we
I
serious?
think it's even more than that. Like, and again, I'm thinking about New York rates. It is basically the same as rent from what I hear from some people.
I just agree with Jazzy. Like, it's a lot more. Like surplus, please. What surplus?